So again, going back to another pyramid, we have this, how do advertisers talk to consumers to try to get them up this pyramid? A lot of ads are appealing to consumers at a fairly low level in the pyramid. That is, they're focusing on sensory stimulation. So they're basically trying to get awareness by, making a loud noise or showing you an image that your eyes are going to gravitate to, and so on. So maybe they're going to use a clever visual like this that I think is wonderful, that communicates softness without having to actually say a word. That to me is great advertising at that level. Then they're going to try maybe to manipulate your emotions and beliefs. So it's more than just a sensory experience. The question is, how do I feel about that brand? What do I believe that brand is capable of doing? And how will that brand change my feelings about me as a person? So sometimes advertising makes us feel bad about ourselves. That's one of the criticisms we hear about modern advertising, is that it makes us feel inadequate, and therefore that's what motivates us to go out and buy whatever we're supposed to buy here. I don't know, Viagra, I don't know, whatever we're supposed to buy here. But then we get up to this level of engagement, and that's where things start to get interesting. So how do we foster a feeling of loyalty, of attachment, of community? To create what some psychologists call a flow state, which is basically where your attention is totally 100% riveted onto the brand experience or onto the interactive experience. So people who play video games, and if you're into that kind of thing, and you look up 2 hours later, 2 hours have gone by, or a weekend has gone by, and you say, oh my God, I've been playing this game for 4 days. I haven't shaved or eaten or anything. You've been in a flow state. And of course, that's something that marketers want to encourage, because anything we can do to get consumers to stay on our websites longer or in our stores longer, obviously is a really, really good thing. So here Harley Davidson is kind of making a statement about engagement. So in other words, it says stop dreaming. Here's your daily job, but really what you're doing, even as you're going about your job, is your mind is somewhere else. Your mind is focused on that fantasy that includes, of course, the Harley. I think reality TV tries to do that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of reality TV. I think it's the biggest oxymoron around, and most people don't. You all probably know as insiders, there's very little reality going on in reality TV, but it is this very engaging type of thing where some people do enter into a flow state with all of these characters up there on the screen. So when we think about building strong brands, we have to really adjust our outlook on this. Because back in the day, we talk about branding strategies and theories. We have all of these marketers out there. Many of you fall into one or more of these categories. They develop this product or brand, and it goes out to the consumer. But today, the consumer, him or herself, is a part of the brand team that's creating that effort. So in what I call consumer space, which is basically just a word I made up that means today, consumers are in the driver's seat. That is, the advertising space is more controlled by the consumer than it is by the marketer, which was back in the good old days when marketers could call the shots and decide when their shows are going to be viewed by people, and things that we can barely remember today. People want to be part of that process, and the technology enables them to do that. So today you can upload a picture of yourself or your friend or whoever, and you can literally become the character in a video game, right? So what's going to happen to measures of advertising effectiveness or spokesperson effectiveness when the spokesperson that you measure at an agency is not, Christy Brinkley or Tiger Woods, but it's you? When you, the consumer, are actually the character that you're going to see on television, or your spouse or your best friend, what's that going to do to ad measurement? Kind of interesting to think about. So we're seeing this explosion in what people are calling user-generated content, And this notion that everyday users are getting so involved that they are becoming advertisers. They are posting their own content in unbelievable volume, and that is really changing the way advertising is working. So some of you, does anybody know about this, the famous Mentos Diet Coke phenomenon from a few years ago? So this is a great example. I won't go to the website now, but if you Google Mentos Diet Coke, you'll probably come up with 1,000 hits of amateur videos where people have, some rocket scientists figured out that if you take these little Mentos candies, you drop them into a Diet Coke bottle, there's some kind of chemical reaction, and these enormous geysers come out of the bottles. And so thousands of these videos have been posted of people, you know, basically doing art with this stuff. Now, the reason I like this example is that you've got two brands here that have nothing to do with one another, Mentos and Diet Coke. One's a small guy, one's a 800-pound gorilla. So if you're the brand manager working on Mentos or Diet Coke, and you wake up one morning and someone says, you know, there's 1,000 videos of people talking about this, what's your reaction to it? Well, Mentos, you know, the people at Mentos said, oh, hallelujah. I've got thousands of people who didn't know what Mentos was yesterday. Today, everybody knows what Mentos is. So they're going to try to encourage people to film these videos, right? What does Diet Coke do? Well, of course, they send their attorneys after all the makers of the video saying, cease and desist because that's our content. You can't use our brand that way. So diametrically opposite reactions to this fusion of two brands together where consumers spontaneously are playing a game with the brands, and that's going out on the internet for thousands to see. So you've got this interesting trade-off and conflict as a manager because you're taking a big risk when you let consumers, you know, when you give the keys from the asylum to the inmates, you're taking a big risk. When you let consumers play with your brand, lots of bad things can happen and you lose control. On the other hand, what you get back potentially is a much higher level of engagement because they, the consumers, are literally creating the messages as opposed to passively receiving them. So yes, bad things can happen. Consumers are pretty creative people. They can take, you know, they can take brand logos and they can do nasty things with them. And I'm sure none of you would want to see your brand logos butchered like this online. But if you work for a big company, the odds are that, you know, you've been butchered somewhere already. The same goes for this brand that I call myself, right? So everybody creates a Facebook page and so on. We tell our students, be careful what you post on the page because all people like you are going, you know, when you're recruiting students, you're going to go and look at their Facebook pages and see who's got their head in the toilet, you know, and from some wild party, right? So that creates business opportunities. This is a company called Reputation Defender. What do? They, for a fee, I'm sure it's a hefty one, they somehow go back in time and erase your digital footprint so that all those embarrassing Facebook pages you've posted now go away somehow. I don't know how they do that, but they claim to be able to do it. Now, the thing is that you don't own your brand these days. So people, no matter what brand you make, people will find some perverse thing to do with it. I doubt that, you know, Zippo lighters thought that this was going to be a hood ornament for someone's face, you know. What I say is get over it. People there's a lot of pushback about this. Consumers don't own our brand. We own our brand. Get over it. There is nothing you can do to stop this. So the more creative and constructive response is, how do I acknowledge that this is a major change in the way consumers interact with brands, and how do I work with that more constructively?